So I asked the organizer, Bhaskar, what do we do? He said, I'm really sorry. We're a hierarchical country. We follow orders. And nobody is allowed to ask questions. I said, all right. Unfortunately, I come from a company which would not function if you were not allowed to ask questions. So it's hard for me. So we're going to call this the Google session, and he's allowed the Google exception. So we're also going to do something called user-generated content, which I'm sure many of you heard about, which is about to put the media industry in trouble because users are generating their own content and consuming it. So you guys are going to have to now ask me questions, and in true Google form, I will try and create a speech on the fly and answer your questions. Are you guys ready for this? All right, good. Okay, so I think there are a few mics around here somewhere. They're supposed to magically appear. Okay. They are there. I promise you, they exist. All right, we have 4 mics, so please go right ahead and start asking questions. We'll collect the questions. We'll try and see if I can answer them in some cohesive way and make sure you go back happy. I was told you guys are very inquisitive. You work in the creative world. You just have to make your presence known, and I think Mike will magically appear. Yes, go. Oh, I thought you were not allowed to ask questions. Okay, fine, go ahead. You asked me, I'll repeat it. I can hear it. There we go.
Hello. I think Google is harming the world, you know. I see the kids of these days, anytime, anything, we ask them a question, they first Google. There is no creativity left inside human beings. So you are making, if you answer all the questions, how people would survive, except some old people told me, I'm not old, that's why, that, you know, tell me, Bhaskar, which question Google cannot answer? I said, I'm not really aware of. I'm anyway technologically challenged. He said, no, still one question, and I'm telling you, Google can never answer. I said, what is that? And why Indians go in numbers to temples? Must be Google can't answer. So that's my question. What Google can't answer, and if you are destroying creativity of kids?
All right, I'm going to keep writing them down as opposed to answering them right now.
Only 2 questions.
All right, go ahead. Anybody else have more questions? There's one back there.
In social media, there are mediums, you know, there are different companies who rule for a certain period of time, and then they pass over the baton to some other companies. It happens with Orkut, now Facebook, now we are seeing Google+. What is the thing that continues with all these things and will continue forever?
Okay.
Yeah. How long?
Go ahead, ask.
Yeah. How long will it take the real world to see eyeball to virtual world?
All right. I think I understood your question.
I have a question here.
Yes.
What went wrong with Google+? It started with a bang, but then it's nowhere.
I have another question as well
Yes.
here. So conversations are one-on-one discussions really, but are we yet ready for the one-on-one in terms of responding directly to the person? Because currently, what kind of content is driving these conversations versus what is the kind of commitment that you need to really drive one-to-one conversations and hence certainty rather than just a sort of broadcasting mindset?
I thought that's a challenge for you guys. Okay.
One more for me.
Please.
Hello.
I come from a television background, and I see the latest 100 channels by YouTube kind of a thing, a big challenge for television going forward. How do you define that landscape? And especially because you guys have run foul with all the cable operators in United States. They're not giving you any bandwidth. And your television service wasn't what it was supposed to be in the first place. But I'm getting threatened because television is being threatened by Google too.
You guys are a very friendly audience. Go ahead.
Right. No,
you guys promised me an easy time.
Now, Google, sorry,
Yes,
the Google, you know, which is built on a single product.
So you have to tell me. Oh, there you are. Right.
No, here.
I see you. Oh.
No, in front of you.
Here,
in front of you. Hello. Nikesh is in front of you. Okay.
Got it.
Here. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
So, no, I mean, Google, which is built on like a single product where search was driving your 90% of your revenues. And now that the search is declining, which is taking over by the, the recommendation of the Facebook. So do you think that there's a serious threat to Google because like your Google Plus really didn't take off the way you thought it would be, because I thought it was more of a copying of Facebook than really creativity coming out of it, which was in the first place?
Okay.
I have a question here.
Yes.
Since this is about building brands, how does a brand control a conversation towards building it rather than letting it go all over the place?
How does a brand control a conversation online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Hey, Manara.
Hi, Nikesh. Just a couple of words, and you can build a presentation around it. One is China, the other one is Motorola. Thank you.
Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint. It is very relaxed. It works.
I have, sorry, one question. Yeah.
Excuse me here.
Sorry,
yes.
One question here, which is about Google TV, which I've been reading about recently. So I'm curious to see whether Google's going to move towards actually becoming a content producer also. So not just distributing content, but actually working with brands to develop, say, branded entertainment, and then sharing that on Google TV.
Okay.
So here. Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Before, Orkut was the one I was using, but when I went to US, everyone was using Facebook. So why US is more friendly towards Facebook than Orkut? Why can't you publish a brand Orkut in US?
We tried.
And also, your CEO was, a couple of months back, was having a conversation with all the leading newspapers in US. And there was a huge hype that Google is going to save the newspaper industry in US. So what is the stance now? And what's happening in that field?
Is that like the temple question, like the prayer thing?
Okay, one more here, Nikesh.
Yes. Check this.
So will you share with us what Google's doing in the future with technology that drives cars on its own and the driver just sits around? And how far away is that in getting from lab to factory and then from getting from factory to the whole world?
Got it. I'm still waiting for mine.
Mr. Google, I have got one question, one fundamental question. What are you? Can you define yourselves?
Sorry, what am I?
What are you? Can you define yourselves from the point of view of business model?
Oh, you mean the company as opposed to me? I thought I'm a holographic image of a person who's sitting in California. Yes.
Nikesh.
Yes.
What is your I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your experience on this term net sentiment versus purchase intent? What's the kind of correlation?
This is a very technical industry phrase for all of you guys. It's like protectionism, right?
We just heard it this morning.
Net sentiment?
Net sentiment. That means the kind of sentiment a page on Facebook is creating,
right,
and the kind of purchase intention it is generating.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
We call it the zero moment of truth, as opposed to the moment of truth. Yes.
Since Google is sort of collecting all this data about us, it sort of knows everything that we do, our search history, our emails, our tasks, our, what we're working on, our preferences, etc., and we're using their web browser.
Too much of it as opposed to too little of it. We came from a world where there was too little information. Now we're coming to a world where there is too much information. And things which you thought were never going to happen have become possible, and we take them for granted. And you look around yourself, you have mobile phones. You can't imagine how life would be without a mobile phone. 5 years ago, if I'd asked that question, how many people have broadband in this room? You didn't have it. Today, if I said, if I cut off your internet connection, or if I take your wallet for a day, which one are you more likely to be happy with? Depending on your gender, you may choose one versus the other, right? So we're at a point where a lot of this technology has become a must-have, and every wave of technology allows the next wave to build on top of it, right? So we've had this wave of information. We all believe that internet is ubiquitous. We can find information wherever we want it. And then the next wave came about. When you have high broadband, high bandwidth, you have lots of information, you have a notion where suddenly you're seeing video on the web. And my friend there is worried about television because people are putting content on the web, and you run the risk that I will start consuming content the way I want it on the web as opposed to it being broadcast to me. The most recent wave, as many of you have seen, is the wave of social networking. Now, what makes Facebook special? What makes Google Plus interesting? The moment you have too much information, you go back to your old notion of community. You have to go back to a notion of, instead of trying to find out what the entire crowd thinks, let me find out what those 5 people I trust think or those 10 people I trust think, which is what we do. This is how we conduct life. The internet is a representation of life. So what happens is, in the social networking world, what we started to do is we started to go back and rely on those 10 friends or 20 friends and 50 friends. I don't want the recommendation of an editor. I don't want the recommendation of 1,000 people. I want to know where my 20 friends are eating. I'd much rather trust their judgment versus trust the judgment of 5 exabytes of information being created every 2 hours. So what we're seeing is we're seeing us go from an era of information or a web of information to a web of people. Right? That is the new trend. It is a web of people. If you remember, there's a time when you all signed up for your first email account. I actually don't remember signing up with my real name for my first email account because it was not important. It was just seemed to be a way to get some messages back and forth. Today, people would pay money to get their name at Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail or whichever email addresses because it's hard to find your own name. And I'd much rather have my own name. So we're going from a world of anonymity on the web to a world we actually want to represent ourselves on the web. And that is the trend. That is why people want to be on Facebook. That is why people want to be on Google Plus as themselves, because I don't want to be, Dolly Raja 20195 at gmail.com. I want to be my name. So you're seeing this big trend from information to people wanting to represent themselves, from a web of information to a web of people, and that's where the next trend is going to be born. Now, if you think of what that means, right? Coupled with the development in technology, coupled with the notion of social activism, coupled with the notion of people wanting to be in control, I think all industry models, all business models are going to change. The power is truly going to be that of the user. It is going to be in the hands of the user. If you think about how it's manifesting itself, look at what happened in the summer in the Middle East, the Arab Spring. If you look at what's happening in the US with Occupy Wall Street, it is these tools of social networking, it is this connection or web of people which is allowing people to get together in a very short notice, create flash mobs, create conversations around certain topics, and when the conversation finishes, they'll go away. Right? There is a new conversation going on. And one of our marketing guys happened to be in Egypt at the time, and he ended up having a Facebook page, and there's a big story around how he ended up creating a whole movement around getting people together, and was part of the reason what happened in Egypt happened. So you're beginning to see that users are beginning to take control. Now that has significant impact into every conversation you guys are having before, whether it's a creative conversation, whether it's a brand building conversation, whether it's a conversation with your users. But let's explore this notion of technology a bit more further, right? So users are in control. There is too much information in the world. There is too much information on the web. Now, all this stuff comes with a bit of a health warning, right? So what happens is somebody was concerned about having too much access to too much information, yet at the same time you saw a piece of creative from Alipay, right, which is about trust. And forever, consumers have been balancing trust with convenience, right? If you don't want anybody to know anything about you, don't tell them. But if nobody knows anything about you, it's highly unlikely you're going to get what you need. So we all strike that balance. When you take out your credit card and use it somewhere, there is a notion that you want to have some convenience. When you want to have that convenience, I'm going to find out who you are. It's most likely that your credit card company knows more about you than most other people around you. Because you've pretty much left digital footprints all over the world. Whenever you travel, wherever you go, they have all that information. You have to trust those people that they're not going to abuse that information or misuse that information for it to be there. So in this entire mess of what's going on in the world, what's going to happen, I think, it is going to fundamentally change the structure of industry. I saw very interestingly, we had this whole conversation around creative, we had this whole conversation around brands and how people are going to have conversations. If you think of the world of video, if you think of the last bastion of advertising, which is the world of television, right? Fundamentally, the only television that I want to watch or I need to watch at that time is live television. If there's a live sporting event happening or there's something happening right now, that's the only reason for me to watch it at that moment in time. There is no reason for me to get in front of my television at 9 p.m. and watch a particular show just because you decided that's the time you want to broadcast it. There's lots of recording technology. There's lots of ways that I can watch it afterwards. So I believe the next big hit is going to happen to the television world. where we're going to watch programming on demand. I'm going to watch it when I want to, and you're going to watch it when you're going to want to. Now, what is going to make that possible? What is going to make that possible is the ubiquity of broadband and the fact there'll be a screen around us somewhere. Whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's your iPad, whether it's your PC, you're going to watch it when you want to watch it. If you believe that gentleman's assertion around the fact that a lot of data is available about me because I've posted my real name in Facebook, I've posted my real name in Google, we know a lot about the user. Now, what do you do if you're in marketing? If you're sitting down trying to decide a brand campaign, what do you do then? Your campaign is going to look something like this, right? Instead of having one ad where you're going to spend tens of millions of dollars and have a celebrity endorse it and show it to 10 million people because that's the old model, you're going to try and figure out, how do I take these 10 million people watching this piece of programming at different points in time, in different conditions, and how do I customize the message to them? So whilst we have one global internet, we're going to one big global audience, we're going to go to an audience of one. That audience of one is an audience where I could tell you exactly how to target them, I could tell you who they are, I could tell you a lot of things about them. Right? How are you, as a creative force, going to change those 10 million pieces of creative for those 10 million people? I don't know the answer. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to go to a very different model. My expectation or my prediction, is a dangerous thing to predict things because usually you're wrong. So at the risk of that, my prediction is that you guys are going to start creating different creatives for different circumstances, different environments for the same campaign. Now, I don't know how you're going to strike that balance. Maybe I need 16 different creatives, maybe I need 32, maybe I need some way of dynamically generating creatives depending on what date, what time, what location I'm watching it from, or who I am, whether I'm 16 years old, I'm 32 years old, or I'm 64 years old. You're going to have to decide, if you're trying to sell me a car, how you want to sell it to different people at different points in time. I think that's a huge challenge from a creative perspective. It changes the shape of the creative agency. Also, if you think about it from a different perspective, the media landscape is changing. It is no longer the traditional media landscape that you go and every newspaper is a newspaper, or every television channel is a television channel. You need to understand GRPs, and you need to understand the brands associated with it. Today, Facebook is a very different media from Google. It's a very different media from YouTube. It's a very different media from Twitter. So in a way, you have to figure out, how do you converge the media and your creative practices to make this happen, to make that conversation happen. So I think it's going to be very interesting and a very confusing world going forward. And in that creative, confusing world, I think we're going to reshape a lot of these conversations. But it's going to go back to the principles we heard earlier. It is going to go back to the principles of brands wanting to build brands, brands wanting to have conversations, creative efforts being deployed by very, very smart young people who are going to have to get together and understand, how do you create that conversation with that individual user? How do you find a way of creating mass market messages that look customized to individuals? Because that's what you guys are going to end up doing. So I think all those challenges are ahead in front of you, how you're going to do that. When I talk about that, although, given that you are all very smart marketing professionals, I am going to posit a new theory. And the new theory is, we spent a lot of time talking about brands and brand awareness. What is interesting, if you go back to the last 15 years and think about it, can you guys rattle off the brands that have been created in the last 15 years? Just yell them out. Google, iPhone, iPad, Facebook, Airtel, Idea, Vodafone, Nokia, Nano. Is that a brand yet? Okay. It's an aspiration. PayPal. All right. Maruti. 15 years? I used to have them when I was 23. Can't be 15 years. I know I'm only 38, yes. Flipkart. Okay, the reason I asked you to rattle them off is a lot of the brands that we've built in the last 15 to 20 years are technology-based brands. A lot of the brands, and what's happening is the brand building cycles are becoming shorter. Right? Google didn't exist 13 years ago. Facebook didn't exist 7 years ago. YouTube didn't exist 9 years ago. Twitter didn't exist 5 years ago. All these brands are known. They're global brands, by the way. They're known in every room of every marketing audience, every youth audience, every university. They know all these brands. How much money did these guys spend versus the Unilevers and the Procter & Gambles of the world, or the Cokes of the world? How much money did they spend? A lot less, right? So what's changed? What's different? Why is it that these guys have been able to build powerful global brands on the back of technological platforms, whilst there are companies of their own right and might which have spent billions of dollars in the last many years and continue to do so in very large consumer markets to build big brands, right? So my theory here is that we're going from a world of brand awareness to brand engagement. So stay with me here for a second, right? We talk about creating creative pieces, putting them on television, broadcasting, showing brand attributes, getting people to understand the brand, inspire them, get them to feel the brand. What's happening with these technological companies is their products are getting in the hands of hundreds of millions of people, right? And the product interaction is starting the brand conversation. The brand conversation is not starting with the messaging conversation. The brand conversation is starting with an interaction. So at least in my industry, it is shifting from a brand conversation to a conversation that starts with a product. If I like your product, I will say good things about you. If I don't like your product, I'm not going to say good things about you. And by the way, I don't have to go to the supermarket. I don't have to go to a different country. I can experience your product on my computer. And the moment you start having that conversation, then it doesn't matter what somebody else tells you. It doesn't matter what ad you see about it. Your experience dictates your love for the brand, or your experience dictates how much you like the brand. And I'll say, wait, Nikesh, that's interesting, but that's only relevant to technological companies, because they are the ones who have the ability to have that conversation. It's not the rest of us. I'm going to say that's wrong. Right? The reason we created GRPs, the reason we created these metrics, the reason the life cycle of understanding whether your campaign had an impact is 6 months is because you have to go survey before, you have to go do the ad, you have to go back and you have to survey at the end, and you have to pray that you've got the right answer. You don't have to do that on the internet, right? We have 2 billion searches a day. Every day, we change 1% of our pages with a new product. And the feedback of that 1% compared to the group of 99% tells us whether they're going to like it or not. So we